Good morning. Welcome back to Pastor's Morning Walk. I'm glad to be back at school. We just had chapel again, and as usual on Mondays, we considered the book of Romans, this time in chapter 9, and the focus was the main theme of that chapter, election, that God has chosen from eternity and freely all who will be saved. He makes it clear in the example of Jacob and Esau that it was before any had done any good or evil. They were in their mother's womb at the time when their mother was told, the older will serve the younger, a fulfillment of an eternal love for Jacob and an eternal hatred for Esau. God, the potter, having a total right, power, authority over his creatures as the clay, can make of one a vessel for honor and of another a vessel for dishonor. And if we were to answer against God, it would be right for Paul to say to us, "Who art thou, O man, that repliest against God?" What can we say to the sovereign God? Now, these things are important, not just because the Bible says them. Ephesians 1:4, for example, he has chosen us in him before the foundation of the world. But they are necessary given what the Bible, and indeed nature itself, teaches about God. Namely, that he is the independent God, the creator who is in no way dependent upon his creatures, this being part of the very definition of God, the independent spirit. Because if God based his saving love upon the works of men, whether in time or foreseen from eternity, either way, God now depends on man. In that respect, he is not God. This is so important when it comes to the debates between Calvinists and Arminians or others who deny the sovereignty of election and God's absolute freedom in these matters. In some degree, they are denying God's Godhead. It is essential to his being God that he depends not on his creatures when he makes his decisions. This is true for all decisions that he makes for all of history and all the operations of all secondary causes, he being the primary cause of all things. But it's also true for salvation, and especially that because this underlines and emphasizes the fact that salvation is all by grace. This is why the doctrines of predestination and election and sovereignty are often called the doctrines of grace. Thus Paul says in the text we considered, Romans 9:11, that it is not of works, but of him that calleth. Salvation is of the Lord. This is basic to the Bible. It is sad how this basic is not affirmed universally in the Christian church, but it ought to be, and it protects for us the doctrine of salvation by grace alone. I read this morning in Matthew 15, and it's a remarkable chapter. It condemns the doctrines of men taught by the Pharisees. It goes on to speak of Christ's wise dealing with the woman of Canaan, and that's a help to us in understanding that Christ often will put on a hard face with his people. He spoke of her and other Gentiles as dogs who did not have a right to the children's bread. And she submitted to this treatment and continued to plead with him for salvation for her daughter. And she proved her faith in her persistence. And Christ marveled at it. If you find whether through affliction or desertion, a lack of assurance, or other troubles, yourself tempted to think that God is no longer kind, remember this passage, that sometimes God acts, so to speak, as if he weren't kind, but he's actually being kind. Because, like Joseph understood with his brethren when he played the hard Egyptian, sometimes hardness is the most merciful thing of all. And God, being perfectly wise, knows exactly when to bless and when to withhold blessing. He does it for his glory, but for those who trust him, his glory always means their good. And though you may not be able to explain it, you need to walk by faith in that reality and not by sight. May the Lord bless you today.